spills, land notifications are always going to be the vast majority of that. And, that normally comes for transportation type accidents. Sometimes we do have some facility releases to land in some of that. But land is always going to be that largest category. And then, of course, we have water and air impacts after that. We had no major spills. We did have one spill in the last 2 quarters involving an EPA FOSE, or essentially one of their FOSEs responding on scene in Alabama. And that was a 28th Street pipeline release in Birmingham and Jefferson County. On March 16th, it was discovered some type of petroleum or fuel was just simply bubbling up out of the ground. This ground was pretty close proximity to Valley Creek. So this material is bubbling up out of the ground and discharging pretty readily into Valley Creek. At the time we first found it, we had a pretty good idea it was probably coming from some type of subsurface gas line. This area in Birmingham is pretty heavily industrialized, and there are several regulated bulk oil facilities in that area. However, we didn't know exactly the source as far as which pipe it was or what company owned the pipe. So we contacted EPA for assistance. They came in, showed up on the 16th, and immediately, all entities began trying to control the release at the source and also try to contain what had entered the creek. EPA also set up some air monitoring in the area just about a quarter mile downstream from the release site or the source, and also Valley Creek, which flows in this direction. It goes by Wiggins Park. So Wiggins Park was showing air levels of benzene at about 9 parts per million. So the city of Birmingham and the EMA elected to close down that park to public until values could return to normal. And it took about 24 hours, but continuous monitoring did show that the benzene levels did drop and air kind of returned to normal. A lot of that reason was because while they were on scene addressing this source, the leak itself actually slowed. This probably had something to do. We notified most of the facilities in that area that there was a leak ongoing, so they kind of took their pipes offline, hoping to reduce that source leak and try to identify whose it was. Since then, it has been some pretty intensive efforts trying to identify whose pipe it is, but as of March the 30th, they still had not identified exactly whose pipe it was. So they're still searching for that source. And as I said, there's a lot of pipes underground in this area. So it's not just as easy as starting digging in the ground and, here it goes. They have to be careful not to rupture another pipe. So a lot of things that go into that. But as I said, as of March 30th, had not identified that. And at this point, it has transitioned out of the emergency response branch to groundwater branch. And they are actively still investigating and watching the ongoing remediation for it. You hit the next slide, Beth. And just real quick, the regional response team update, RRT4 update, really there's not a lot to update. As I told you in the last CERC meeting, the last time the RRT met in person was February 4th through the 6th of 2020, which was pre-COVID. The last time we met virtually was just over a year ago in February of last year. And we were scheduled to meet in person this March, 8th through the 10th in Mississippi. And I really thought we were going to make this one. They had canceled 2 previous times due to COVID. I thought we were going to make this one because we got so close, but about 2 weeks prior to the meeting, EPA elected to cancel this as well. And they cited some COVID protocols that they could not meet regarding the size meeting was going to be. These were, they're dealing with federal type regulations and meeting protocols when it comes to this. So a lot of this was out of their hands. So they had to cancel now. And fingers crossed, we will tentatively have the next meeting scheduled for August again in Mississippi. So hopefully we'll actually be able to reconvene for the first time in 2 years in person and, kind of address some issues and begin doing what the RRT is supposed to do. So barring any questions, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, that will conclude my update.
I don't see any questions, so we'll proceed excuse me, to the next update. I have the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know update. And this year, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to go over the results of the hazardous chemical inventory. These are forms that are filed every year by industries that meet the requirements, a certain reporting threshold of these chemicals that are considered hazardous. They have to file this report every year by March 1st. For the state of Alabama, they have two options for filing. One is using a program called Tier 2 Submit, which is the EPA's free program, and the other is an online program called ePlan. And so for Tier 2 Submit, we had 1,774 facilities that filed using Tier 2 Submit, and for ePlan, we had 1,899. This is the first year that ePlan submissions outweighed Tier 2 Submit submissions, so it was pretty interesting to see the increase in ePlan this year. Several LEPCs have now required ePlan as a reporting format. So I think that's the reason the numbers have increased so much. The total reporting facilities for this year so far is 3,673, which is on par more or less with last year's data. This is pretty small, so I'm not sure if you can see it, but we can send out these slides if anybody's interested. I try to do the Tier 2 facility numbers by county, so you can look in alphabetical order and see your county name to see how many Tier 2 facilities are in your area. When you process your data for the year, your numbers should reflect these numbers here. So they might be off by one or two. If there's a duplicate, for example, or if someone files late, these numbers may change. But for right now, this is the numbers recorded currently for your county. So you'll want to compare your data set that you've received to the state data set by logging into ePlan and looking at your facility county data to make sure that you've received reports from all the facilities that have also filed to the state. So if you have any questions about logging into ePlan and accessing your county data, I'm always available to talk with you over Teams or the phone and to assist you with getting access to your county data set. That is all I have for my update this year. To access ePlan, you go to erplan.net. There's an online training for first responders link here. And also for those of you that use CAMEO, which is the EPA's free version for first responders, it's called the Computer Aided Management of Emergency Operations Software. It's a suite of programs that use this Tier 2 information and allow for first responders to enter in data like incidents or routes for that facility. We also do training for CAMEO as well, if you have any interest in that. So if you have any training needs, please reach out to me and we can figure out a training date in the future if you want to actually have more hands-on training. That is it for me. Unless there are any questions, we'll give a moment for questions. It looks like Bailey Pope with Jefferson County has joined us. She asked, can she get a contact person for the groundwater branch regarding the 28th Street release? Grady, do you think you could put a contact in the chat for Bailey, or can we email that to her after?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Bailey, I don't know exactly who is handling that within our groundwater currently. I just know it has transitioned over there, but I tell you what, if you want to call me or email me and I can put that information in the chat after the meeting, I will get you that contact for that site.
Okay.
Hey, Beth, this is Casey Rice with Tuscaloosa County LEPC. Hey, have you done your annual magic that you take all the Tier 2s that were put in Tier 2 Submit and put them in ePlan yet?
Yes, that has occurred as of this week. So now if you log in at this moment, the whole data set will be available to you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am, you're welcome. Thank you for asking. That's a good question. For those of you that have joined since we began, if I see Sandy joined us, if you could just type in your name and your organization in the chat so we can record your presence, that would be great. Next up on the agenda, we have new business. We are very fortunate to have James Brown and Grant Lyons here with Coffee County EMA. They did an event with Anhydrous ammonia for a response planning meeting. And I thought it was really good. And we asked them to come and speak about their experience with working with the facility and working with their LEPC and sort of this process that they engaged in to do this ammonia leak response planning. So they are here with us today, and I'm gonna, they can take control of the presentation now, and it's gonna stop my presentation and start theirs. Let's see. All right, you can start sharing your presentation now, Grant. All right, good to go. We can see it. Thank you so much. You're on mute, Grant. It should be the button in the upper right-hand corner with the microphone to the left of the red leave button. Let's see if I can manually unmute you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Awesome. Good deal. All right. Well, good morning, and we appreciate you having us to talk about one of the things that we've been working on here in Coffee County for the past really couple of years with Benny Keith. And what we're going to do, we're going to go through a little presentation here to talk about our partnership with Benny Keith. And we just have a little bit of information to share with you, and then we'll take any questions at the end. But again, Grant Lyons with Coffee County EMA. This is my boss, James Brown. We'll move through these slides, and again, if you have questions, we'll be happy to help answer those as well. So when we started this a couple of years ago with Benny Keith, they had come in and were looking for an area to set up their regional distribution center somewhere in the southeast. And fortunately for us, they looked at Coffee County. They looked at a couple of counties that touch us as well in southeast Alabama, and they ended up choosing Coffee County and New Brockton, which is where our office is here in central Coffee County. So in order to make all this happen and for them to be able to build the facility, we obviously had to have different kinds of relationships with all different types of partners and agencies, which we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. So what we are going to talk about today is the project itself, as well as how we plan to communicate with those different agencies. We do have some issues that could come up and could still come up with this project, which initiated one of the big meetings that we had recently. And then we'll talk about some of the impacts that could come from some of those problems that we may have. Let's see here. So Benny Keith, they have a Southeast Division headquarters and distribution center that has just opened in New Brockton in Coffee County. It's a little under 500,000 square feet. It's got the capabilities to expand to over 1 million square feet, and that will probably happen within the next 10 years, according to the company. They typically build these projects with around 500,000 square feet, and then their desire is to expand within 6 to 10 years to capitalize on that 1 million square feet and expand their operations. So the current warehouse, they have 53 dock doors with over 61,000 square feet of dock space. They can take 28,000 stock items, shipping and receiving. And their area that they serve is going to be the southeast area to include Alabama, portions of Mississippi, Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle. One of our biggest concerns is that last little bullet point down there at the very bottom. There's 200,000 square feet of refrigerated space that's requiring 28,000 pounds of anhydrous ammonia. So they have ultra cold storage in the facility, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and that can present a problem should we have some type of emergency with the facility itself. Just threw a quick picture in for you to look at. This is obviously a drawing, but really does reflect the current project now and its completion. You can see on the image that there's a lot of space. You've got some cold storage on the left of the screen. You have some ultra cold storage on the right of the screen, as well as their own refueling and a maintenance operation on the back right side in the image. What's neat about this for Benny Keith is that you can see the highway in the image, and they have access to the highway US 84 that helps them. They use that as their corridor for transportation. So throughout the project, we had constant contact almost as soon as they started building. Really prior to that, we were talking with Benny Keith staff, and in particular the ESI group, and that's the group that was the project manager and construction group building Benny Keith. So we had constant contact with them. As the project progressed, we would meet with the ESI project manager as well as local law enforcement, fire departments, of course, our office, the fire marshal. We had many partners involved. And as the project went along and before they dropped the anhydrous ammonia, we would have meetings with them just to make sure we were all on the same page. And I will stress there, and James and I have talked about this quite a bit, we've been fortunate in Coffee County to have good relationships with all of our first responders. That was a big thing for us is, we have to work with these people if anything happens. But we also want to know them and have relationships with them prior to that. Makes it a lot easier for us to work a response should we have one. So we've got good relationships with these people, and then we were able to introduce them to ESI, and that was really a positive thing for us to carry forward as they moved along building Benny Keith. Another one that we'll hit, as you can see on the slide, as we got close to charging the cooling system, we had more intense planning meetings with Benny Keith as well as our LEPC, which Grady alluded to. We had our schools involved, which we'll talk about in just a second, as well as our government leaders, who, as you all know, are the decision makers much of the time, and our local fire departments and law enforcement, as well as Fort Rucker. And we'll hit the military piece real quick just to help you all probably understand this, but we're a rural county, and we don't have a lot of options when it comes to response or a big response from one agency, right? So we would have to coordinate our response through multiple agencies and probably multiple counties as well as Fort Rucker should we have a big emergency, a big type disaster in Coffee County. So all these agencies that we're meeting with, for example, in Coffee County alone, we have 9 fire departments, and most of those would be responding in some capacity if we should have an emergency out at Benny Keith. So this just gives us a chance through these pre-planning and communication meetings to talk about what our capabilities are and where our shortcomings might be should something happen. So our issues and potential problems with Benny Keith, obviously the big one is the anhydrous ammonia. If there was some type of a leak with the system, then we're going to have to address that, and it's going to be a challenge. But this is why we were having all these meetings, is to kind of say, hey, this is what our response is going to look like, and this is what we're going to be able to do to assist Benny Keith. They do have their own folks that will help. It's their response team on site, but then we'll be there to supplement and help manage the incident. Other issues that we have identified, and in EMA, we're always worst case scenarios, so we have to think about this kind of stuff. But should an aircraft or helicopter crash into that facility, should we get a fire, some type of big fire, hurricanes and tornadoes, which for us, it's less about the hurricane and more about the winds and the tornadoes that spin up from the hurricane when they get up into southeast Alabama. And then our proximity to the population. So we've got a couple of different things. Even though we're a rural county, there's a couple of different things that are close to Benny Keith that we would have to immediately address depending on time of day of any of these issues and problems did occur. So here is just 2 little pictures that I wanted to throw in here and show you. The image on the left with the tank, that is the anhydrous ammonia being put into or loaded into the facility at Benny Keith, and the image on your right is the tanks that is stored in. This was pretty neat. James and I have gotten to go out to Benny Keith. Man, we went out a bunch of times prior to the completion of the project, and they were great. They would walk us through the facility and answer any questions that we had. We also had the fire departments and the sheriff's office and our local police department that were involved with that as well. So the idea being there is that we wanted to be able to walk into that facility and know where everything was, know where the dangers were, but especially know where the product was that was going to pose a threat to the facility and our immediate area should something happen. So just two little pictures there for y'all to take a look at. So identifying the impacts, and I'm going to talk to one of these real quick, and then James is going to jump in. What we want to talk about through a few of these is who is going to be affected by this? Who could be? Where would they be at? How does it work? What can we do in emergency management to help? And then what can we utilize as far as our capabilities from responding agencies to help mitigate that particular incident? Down at the bottom, you'll see our what if scenarios. James did real good with this, and he can talk to this as well, but we have a couple of different scenarios that we put up. And again, we're talking worst case scenario, but that's what we have to do, is try to manage and mitigate through this. So we'll talk about a few scenarios that we worked out and ran using CAMEO, MARPLOT, and ALOHA, which again, I don't know how familiar you all are with those. You probably are, but we'll show you how we put that information in and what it did to help us as we plan and prepare for a potential incident. So who's in the path? This is our first impact that we're going to look at. If we had an issue at Benny Keith, we can use MARPLOT and we can put that information in, generate us a little population. So in this particular example, you'll see in New Brockton, in the red, we've got a 2-mile radius, and that's going to give us around 1,250 people. And according to this, 605 housing units. So while that may not seem like a lot, or it may seem like a lot to some, that is an immediate concern for us that we have to understand and then deal with as far as a response would be concerned. MARPLOT, and again, James will hit on these in just a few minutes. Some of the other ones, CAMEO and ALOHA. These can be excellent tools for us as far as planning and preparation should we have an incident. These can really help us identify the immediate threats and who might be affected. So using MARPLOT, also understanding our area, of course, James and I know our county pretty well, but we can immediately look at what is going to be affected should Benny Keith have some type of a leak or an emergency. So in this particular image, within 2 miles, you can see the different areas that would be affected. So a little bit off to our west, we have Brownfield. So that's part of the Fort Rucker. Then you have up to town, you can see the town of New Brockton right in the image. We've got a couple of different schools. So we have an elementary school and a high school. You can see in the image that the high school is only a half mile. It's really a little bit less than that away from the actual plant itself. And then if you keep looking over to the right in the image, which would be out to the east, within 2 miles, less than 2 miles, is our town hall and also our county complex. And the county complex houses our office for EMA, as well as the county sheriff's office and jail, and our engineering office, environmental services. So basically our county government is housed within that 2-mile radius as well. So Benny Keith does have the potential to be impactful. Even though New Brockton's small, it could impact us in a big way, depending on different conditions, such as wind speed. So we'll talk more about that in just a second. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James and let him talk for just a few minutes.
All right. Sorry, we had to change spots there. Yeah, a little technical difficulties. Our computer in our briefing room went down, so we're stuffed in Grant's office, but we'll get through this. What I want to talk about is a little bit more of the technical side of it and kind of how we put everything together to present to our LEPC in order to make plans for what we're going to do if we should have one of the scenarios that we laid out. And as Grant said, we always plan for the worst case and hope for the best. So doing that, the first thing we looked at was our AEGLs. It's a little book. I think most of you probably know exactly what that is and where you could find it. And I keep one in my truck. So we wanted to know what is this ammonia going to do to somebody and how much can they take? So of course we don't want anybody to get to that AEGL 3, which could be life-threatening. where the number 2 is just about as bad because it could cause some irreversible damage like lung damage, damage to eyes, different things like that. So we don't even really want to get to an AGL2 level with exposure for our population. So we want to keep everything at 1 or below. And so then we decided, well, how long can we be exposed in order to not get to a level that we're going to be concerned with? Now, when we finally got to the scenarios, and I'll get to those in a minute, we've seen that really most things are pretty much over in 10 to 30 minutes. But we went ahead and, again, worst case scenario, we went with a 60-minute exposure and what we could take at a 60-minute exposure. Because we knew we did have a school really close. We knew that if we were going to have to evacuate, we aren't going to get it done probably in less than an hour, even if we had the buses sitting right around the corner. And so this is one of our concerns. So this is one of our planning factors that we used as 60 minutes of exposure. So after we did that, we decided that we need to know what the impacts are going to be. We need to know what things we need to gather in order to put those things in these 3 programs, CAMEO, ALOHA, and MARPLOT. And each one of them does a little bit different thing for us. And like CAMEO tells you what the substance is. ALOHA can give you some graphs to tell you what's going to affect a particular area. And MARPLOT actually puts it onto a graphic to view those things that you put in the other ones. So we talked to Benny Keith, we met with our LAPC, we came up with some things that we needed to gather in order to put our plots together. So you see these things here, where the vessel's at, the size of the leak that we expect. And again, we go with worst case scenario. We used a 4-inch leak and we used a 1-inch leak just to give us some ideas of what it would be. Of course, we need to know all the weather stuff, the wind speed, the direction, the temperature, the humidity. And so we ran these for both nighttime and daytime, and winter temperatures and summer temperatures on average. But one of the first things we needed to really know is which way does the wind typically go for? Now, if you were to ask me, I would have said it typically comes from the west, southwest. But once we got hold of the National Weather Service, they were able to provide us with these wind roses, and they provided one for each month of the year. And you can see, based on this, how often wind comes from a particular direction during a particular month. Now, this is for all year. You can see it's pretty evenly spread out, which I was kind of surprised to see. We get wind coming from all the different directions. And we needed this to know what facilities would really be in danger during what times of the year and what things we had to do to put our plan together for, hey, we get a leak in January, more than likely the wind's coming from here, the temperature is about here, this is what we could expect. And the thing we're really concerned with was what was the levels going to be on the inside of the buildings. And through ALOHA, you can actually get those things to tell you what it's going to be on the inside versus the outside, because we didn't know if we're going to be able to evacuate our schools in time. And we, of course, wanted them to go upwind, not downwind. We didn't want the wind blowing in their face and blowing the stuff right at them. So this is one of the things that helped us put that together. Other information we needed, size, location, and we went over all that. Sheltering's a big one. Is there any trees or buildings in the way that'll help slow this down? And so with that information gathered, we're able to use CAMEO suite to put together different scenarios. So like I said, we ran many scenarios, and I'm only going to show you like 2 or 3 here just to give you an idea of what we put together for our LEPC, so that we could brief our government officials, our schools, the jail. Hey, you know, evacuating a jail is almost impossible, and it takes some time. because there's no other facilities within about a 40-mile radius that we can put these individuals at. So we had to also talk to our military facilities, because as you've seen, we had Brown Field within about a mile, a little over a mile from us, and that's a big landing site and training area for helicopters. So we ran through these scenarios, and the first one was, hey, what happens if a helicopter crashes into Benny Keith right at the tank? And looking at this, we're feeling pretty good, because I don't know if you can see my arrow here, but the school's at about that half mile, a little under a half mile. It doesn't even go out that far. So we could see that that was pretty much in the compound itself. It wouldn't be a big threat to our population. So even though that would be one of the worst case scenarios, it wasn't something that was going to affect anybody outside of the campus. Now, of course, there'd be a big response to the campus, but not a lot outside of it. Here's another one we ran, and again, we ran them based on winds towards these targets that we were trying to plan for. So this one was going towards Brown Field, where we talked about the Army does some of their helicopter training. And you can see they get affected to that orange level there, which is the level that starts to have some permanent problems with breathing, eye problems, things like that. So if people are outside, we needed to get them inside, and then we needed to know what the levels were inside. And I'll show you some of those plots here in just a minute. Here's another one we ran. This is towards New Brockton High School and the elementary school. Now you can see, unfortunately, in this one, our school, our high school, would be in the red zone. Now, red zone means it's going to kill you. So that is not something we want to have. And so we worked out different things with our LEPC on how we could get a warning. We worked with Benny Keith on what they would do in order to make sure that the population close to there were informed. You know, do you have a siren? Is there a mass notification system we can use? And we do have one of those in Coffee County that we could use, but we need to get this out real quick. And I'll show you what I mean by real quick on this next slide. Hopefully you can see this. It looks like at about 6 minutes that thing peaks right outside. So yes, it goes up into that red level, way above the red level, if we have that 4-inch leak, and it gets up to about 10,000 parts per million. But you also see it drops just as fast. So if you look at the inside number, we're looking a lot better. The inside number actually takes us down to a level that we're not concerned with. So the only concern we really had then is sporting events or anybody who's outside at the time that leaked, and how we get them inside as soon as possible. So the next one we ran was for the elementary school. And again, this is a little bit more clear, where you can see the inside line. It's a very thin blue line at the very bottom. And you can see the AEGL number 1 is above that. So if we're inside, again, we're good. If we're outside, we got to move fast, because as you can see, within about 8 minutes, it's peaking, and within 10 minutes, it drops off to nothing. So after looking through all these, we had our discussion with our first responders, with our LEPC, with the military, with ADEM, with everybody we could think of, in order to discuss where we think we should do and what we think we should put in our response plans. The decision to evacuate was pretty much null and void, because you can see about how fast these numbers would go. And even running it as a slow leak, the numbers go not as high as the fast leak, of course, but being outside was still a danger to us. And so we didn't think we could get the school buses there in time, get kids from the school into the bus in order to be safe enough. So in discussions with everybody, it was decided that in our plan, we're going to recommend shelter in place. And some of the things that we instituted with our schools and our government offices is if we have this siren go off and we send you a mass notification, these are the things we recommend you do. Close your doors and windows, turn off heat, air conditioning, wet towels and put them under the doors. And we've put those in all the different janitors' closets and trained everybody on how to do this. Now the tape windows and door seams, that's probably not going to be possible. We'd like to see it happen, but we know that in that 6 to 8 minutes, you're probably not going to have enough time to do all that. We have the tape in our kits, but we don't really expect that it'll probably be used in a circumstance like this. So that's kind of the technical side, and Grant presented you with some of the coordination side and how we met with our LEPC to put this together. And then I went over some of the more technical side and all of our things that we ran, our scenarios to make our plan. We now have a plan that we think is a good plan, about the best we can do. It's the same thing we tell people with tornadoes. You may not have a perfect site to hide, but we want you to hide in the best place you can. So that's why we do these types of things. So with that, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. This is our contact information. If you want to learn a little bit more about what we did or see how we plotted these things out, we'd be happy to share that with you. And Beth, I think that's it. I don't know if you can take this back.
Hey, James, I had a question for you.
Sure.
So obviously, Benny Keith was very proactive in working with y'all. Do you feel like that's typical of what you've seen with facilities in your county, or is this kind of a first?
This is really kind of a first, and this is the way we'd like to go. So after this, I think it really reinvigorated people in seeing that, hey, man, we really need to do this type of planning, especially for like all our wells that have chlorine and chlorine gas. And we have some of those that are right near schools. So we've met with some of the fire chiefs, and we're starting to go out and plot all those on a map and be able to build the same type of scenario for each one of those things. So yes, this was probably not typical, but because we had such a good relationship with Benny Keith, we're trying to expand that and make it more typical.
Yeah, well, I just add that having been a little bit a part of this, it was really good to see not just the EMA but the industry being as, like I said, proactive as they were. A lot of times we'll go to some LAPC meetings and, it's hard enough just getting industry to the table, much less wanting them to be, y'all to be part of their planning process. And sometimes it even seems like, for whatever reason, there's some type of, almost feels like that industry has this adversarial idea of a relationship between first responders, EMA, and industry, which really is not the case whatsoever. You really want to be partners in that. And I just say I commend y'all as well as the industry, Benny Keith, on how they handled that. I thought it was well done all the way around. They were very interested in everything y'all had to say in the meetings I was at, and vice versa. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the things, is convincing them that you're there to help. We have the same problem when we deal with FEMA. FEMA comes in and says we're here to help, and we go, yeah, right. But and we run into the same thing with our fire departments, with our police departments. Until you can prove yourself that you're there to actually do something that's going to be a benefit, it does take some coordination.
All right, I checked the chat box. I don't see any questions for you guys. Again, thank you both so much for coming and being willing to present. It was a really good topic and a really good discussion, and we're grateful that you guys were here. We'll proceed on now to the agency roundtable. We instituted this last meeting. We really want to give all of the agencies present a chance to share any updates from their agency, and to also share any training events that might benefit others. So we want to open the floor. We're not going to go around and name each agency specifically because that can take a lot of time, but we do want to open the floor and give anyone that wants to speak a chance to give an update or share a training event. So the floor is open now. You can unmute yourself and speak freely at this time.
Good morning, everyone. This is Melinda, Governor's Office of Volunteer Services. I just invite you all to visit our website at servealabama.gov and go to the Events and Training tab, and we have disaster preparedness training that are coming up, and to visit there regularly. We have a couple coming up that aren't posted there, but please go there regularly to see some of our trainings. We do have a CERT training coming up next month in Tuscaloosa. Community Emergency Response Team, Train the Trainer. So that's so that will be very good. We're excited to get the CERT program back up and going. We have Tian Yeager is our staff member who's leading that effort. So please visit our website to learn more about that. And also we have mental health training that's available virtual to our partners, our volunteers, nonprofits, and faith-based groups. And we are subsidizing the mental health first aid training for adults. And also there's one for youth. We know individuals have been going through so much. You can, whether you're the first responder or a regular volunteer, a lot has been going on. COVID has exacerbated a lot of things. So we just wanted to make sure folks have know that we're offering this, and please take advantage of it. And it's all virtual, and CEUs are there attached. When you register, it'll look like there's a $30 fee, but you should look around and you'll see where it's crossed off as a discount. So we are subsidizing that, and please share that with any of your other partners that might be interested. We're providing that to AmeriCorps partners, AmeriCorps members, staffs, AmeriCorps seniors, VISTA, NCCC, and alumni. We manage the AmeriCorps state. Nonprofit, their staffs and volunteers, and community-based and faith-based groups, staff and volunteers, our VOAD partners, existing CERT teams, volunteer first responders, and any of our other state partners. So we really hope people take advantage of that opportunity. That's all for now, pending any questions. Thank you.
Melinda, would you mind throwing that link into the chat box so we can have record of that link?
I can do that now.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Good.
All right, does anybody else like to add anything? I will say this, it doesn't necessarily have to fit in just with ESF 10, obviously the CERC. We do deal mainly with hazardous materials and petroleum and releases of that kind of material. But, you know, I also like to think of this as beyond that, kind of an all hazards type group, because, you know, let's be honest, we had storms move through last night, and chances are they had really gotten bad, worse than they were. You know, we're all going to be working together on that. So if there's anything else out there, not necessarily just relating to it, but any updates, feel free to speak now, or we will move on.
Hey, this is Laura. I'm wondering if Grant can send his presentation to me so I can attach it to the notes.
Grant, would you be willing to do that? They might have popped off. I'll send them an email and ask if they'd be willing to do that. And if so, I'll email you the, if you could put your email in the chat, then I'll email you his response.
Okay, thank you.
All right, final call. Anyone else would like to say anything before we close this up? All right, hearing none, so we will go ahead and close this meeting. Again, I would very much like to thank everyone for attending, particularly given the night we dealt with last night. I know sometimes it can be in the middle of all those kind of things when you've had very little sleep, somewhat of a burden, but we appreciate everyone still holding this meeting and this council in high regard because it is necessary, and it does provide a very good outlet for many things. So thank y'all for attending, And Beth, if you have anything else.
I think I'm good to go. We will have a meeting hopefully in the fall. So be looking for in a few months for the information about the fall meeting. And that's all the other things I can think of. So thank you all for coming, and I'll end the recording here. We're going to try to, I don't know if it'll be too large to email the file, but if it is, we'll put it on, we'll find a way to make it accessible and email that out to all the members after the meeting. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank y'all.